Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the next session here. This is going to be one of our silver sponsor speakers. This is going to be with the CEO and founder of NatPaks with Natalie Hunt. This session is going to be called Nourished for Optimal Health, even in high stress. So, for those who are in here, throw something in the comments just so that I know that you're here because I need you to assist me with something really quick. This session is actually pre-recorded, so it's a video that I'm going to be sharing, but I need to make sure that you can hear it. I tried to play a video in a different session, and for some reason, people couldn't hear it, so I need to know if you're able to hear it as we go along, because I don't want to play the video and it just be voice, or not voice, just the video. So for those that are in here, just type something. And I'll be able to see it here. Roxy, all right. Okay, so I'm gonna share this really quick, and I need you to tell me, Roxy, if you can hear what I'm going to be playing. So hold on one moment. Aaron, what is going on? All right, here we go.
Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Natalie Hunt with NatPaks Meals and Catering. I specialize in food and nutrition and provide individually prepared meals for Central North Carolina. I also teach cooking classes. I'm a certified yoga instructor and really specialize in nutrition, wellness, and the body. And so thank you all so much for being here with me. Today, we're going to talk about Nourished for Optimal Health, even in high stress. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you all, and I'm ready to dive into nutrition together. I want to start by sharing a fun fact. The physical, mental health, fitness, and wellness industry is a $4.9 trillion industry. I won't share too many of the facts and statistics, but I do find some of them really eye-opening. And some of the industry components here are physician and pharmacy, product supplements, gyms and studios, mental health and awareness, and then, of course, books and publications. But even with all of those resources, obesity has increased over the last 10 years. 40% of the US adults have metabolic syndrome. That's 1 in 6 adults. So metabolic syndrome, let's talk a little bit about that. Metabolic syndrome is essentially excess abdominal fat or obesity, type 2 diabetes, hypertension or high blood pressure, elevated cortisol, and low HDL. Having one of these risk factors increases your risk for cardiovascular disease. And most people who have type 2 diabetes also have metabolic syndrome. The term metabolic refers to all of the biochemical processes that occur in our cells and allow us to eat, breathe, exercise, and do daily activities. So some of the causes of metabolic syndrome include stress, lack of movement, poor diet, and lifestyle choices. So this is essentially the primary cause of metabolic syndrome. We are a stressed population, and a lot of times we're fueling our body with all the wrong things. And so I think that it is really important to focus on some of these contributing factors to metabolic syndrome, because as a population, we are at serious risk for chronic long-term disease, and this could result to more call volume for you and your teams. It's even more important because of your role and stress level that you're aware you're at a high risk for developing metabolic syndrome. While this is a serious condition, the good news is it can be prevented. So metabolic syndrome is contributes to the top 10 causes of death, and here I have those listed out. The good news is 70% of the top 10 causes of death are actually preventable. We'll get to more of that later. So let's talk a little bit more about you and your particular industry. So, and the stress related to being in a 911 dispatch center. So your brain, in a typical stress scenario, your brain sends a signal to the hypothalamus to cue the sympathetic nervous system. So in that time, your eyes dilate, your heart rate increases, airways constrict, your breathing shallows, and your adrenals release cortisol to help you respond to the stressor in that moment. In addition to that, this is the time when your digestion and immunity are suppressed. So, in times of elevated stress and long-term chronic stress, particularly within your industry, as first responders and dispatchers, you deal with a different level of stress on a daily basis. Between long shifts, call volumes, short staff, you are on the forefront every day, and it takes a toll on the body. So long-term elevated, in a typical stress scenario, your body responds and can actually recover from the stress within 2 hours. However, in a long-term stress scenarios, elevated cortisol is damaging. It impacts how the body stores fat. It influences our appetite. It impacts our energy and emotions. It can disrupt your sleep and sex drive. It also plays a part in hormones, anxiety, and even depression. So when when reserves of cortisol and adrenaline are exhausted, it can lead to that wired but tired feeling and can have you reaching for all the wrong foods. It creates cellular insulin resistance and impacts how the body stores fat and your appetite. It even causes cravings and leads to eating more high calorie foods and sweets with eventual weight gain. The ghrelin main function is to increase appetite. It makes you consume more food, and it is a result of that high stress scenario. In addition, it also affects the sleep and wake cycle. It is that reward seeking behavior that you're looking for with taste and sensation and carbohydrate metabolism. It's produced in the stomach and enters your bloodstream and the hypothalamus, which regulates hormone and appetite. The higher your levels, the hungrier you get, and the more likely you are to reach for all the wrong things. So here I'm going to pull in Ricardo, and we're going to see a little bit more about his experience in the industry around food and stress.
So thank you for having me. And this has been very eye-opening already. I know there's a lot more to go, but just this alone, this is crazy. So what you're telling me is that when I was in dispatch and everything, all the levels are high and everything. This is why I was always reaching for Skittles.
Yes, because your body has, under this high stress environment, your body's actually craving things that are comforting and would allow you to have more energy to respond to the stressors. But in a long-term stress scenario, these elevated levels can really encourage you to eat all the wrong things all the time and put you at high risk for chronic and deadly diseases.
Oh, geez. Okay, so I have this is crazy, but this is good. This is all stuff that everyone here in the audience needs to hear and really think about because There was a time, like, in the beginning, and I say this time, but this is before dispatch. So before dispatch, I did not have, high blood pressure, and I did not have, acid reflux. And, being in dispatch, and of course, probably not just the high stress, but all of this that we see on the screen here that I was probably consuming a lot of while I was there in dispatch, I eventually, ended up developing all of this.
Right, and we see that a lot for individuals in high stress scenarios. The body is craving these items and like sugar and sweets, but copious amounts of cookies, cakes, and even caffeine are not always the best answer. So,
Mhm.
in those times of high stress, we really want to think about nourishing the body. And so, we'll get to a little bit more of that later. But even for me and my background, I haven't always been in food and nutrition, and there were times where my team was working for deadlines or pushing to meet objectives, and like, the first thing that you want to go to is these types of items, whether it's cookies, sodas, and caffeine. And we really kind of forget, like, those elevated cortisol levels, adrenaline take over, and they tell us to eat a lot of stuff that we may not otherwise eat if we weren't in that high stress environment. And so some of the long-term effects of eating like this, of course, is high blood pressure, cholesterol, and setting ourselves up for weight gain, cardiovascular disease, and some really potential scary chronic issues. And so it's seen and it's very common, but there is a lot of science behind it. So I really appreciate the opportunity to bring you in,
Mhm.
and I'm excited to talk about this a little bit more.
All
So
right. Let's continue.
yes. So ghrelin, we'll talk a little bit more about that. That again, that triggers the behavior and taste sensation. It influences our hormones, the sleep and wake cycle. It increases our appetite and really kind of drives that desire to reach for sweets.
Oh man. So really quick, as you move on here, I just want to mention it's almost as if, so there's always the talk about, you've got those two voices, right? Or they're on each shoulder. You've got the good, the bad, but there's all this other one that seems to be even worse than the bad.
Adrenaline, I know, and it's like such a
Yeah.
kind of strange name, but it is a result of our body's response to stress and cortisol.
Mhm.
And it's really complex. And so this is kind of the most simple way that I can put it. And it but it really does drive our appetite and our desire to eat poorly in high stress scenarios. And so again, like all of that, the long-term stress exposure and the imbalances from diet and lifestyle choices put us at a high risk for many chronic common diseases. And so it's not exclusive to your industry. We're seeing this overall as a whole. And so that kind of
Mhm.
goes back to how the metabolic statistics of 1 in 6 adults in the US are at risk for metabolic syndrome. And so overall, that could mean more call volume for you and your teams, potentially more team members out or unhealthy. And so we'll also talk some more about stress and what's going on in the body as a result of long-term chronic stress. So again, all of that contributes. We're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. I always get excited when I'm chatting with Ricardo and kind of sharing these details because we have so many stories, and his experience firsthand within the industry really does help us understand what that's like, and like copious amounts of caffeine and ordering fast food. And so here again, all of those activities, the stress, the diet can lead to those top 10 causes of death, and how 70% of these are preventable with a healthy lifestyle and nourishing food. So we really need to offset the effects of stress. We really need more of this. So healthy food, movement, walking, meditation, sleep, and yoga, those are all really great tools. So, in addition, for nourishing the body for physical and mental health, support groups. So if you ever feel like the weight of your role is heavy, please reach out to your team member, your management, and other individuals in your center. But also, if you are struggling with any of the symptoms of metabolic syndrome, seek medical assistance. Of course, today we're here to educate and share some of these important topics, but don't forego getting medical advice. I hope that this illustrates some of the things that happen to your body as a result of stress and some of the things that we can do to offset that. But again, do not hesitate to seek a medical assistance or utilize your team and resources if you're feeling overwhelmed.
Now, if we can go back to the slide here really quick, um, because I know you're going to break this down a little more, but some of the main parts here, especially for me, was the movement, because I didn't take advantage of the fact that my consoles could move up. Every so often I would, but other times I would just be sitting there. And now, like if I could go back in time and talk to myself, I would tell myself, kind of pay attention to your posture a little bit more, because I was having back issues and everything, yet I'm the one who is complaining about it, but then I end up like this, like sitting some weird way, right? Because it feels comfortable, but that's more so probably because that's how much I was doing it. So my body felt comfortable that way, right? But
Yes.
it wasn't supposed to be that way. It was hurting probably more because I was sitting the way I was supposed to be sitting.
Yeah, posture and those types of when you're sitting at a desk, and ergonomics is really important.
Mhm.
But movement, in addition to that, also standing during your shift, that can be a great addition. Um, for working in that environment, and it can also lead to a healthier, happy body. So
Mhm.
movement is a big part, and we will kind of get into that as well. But here again, for nourishing the body for optimal physical and mental health, we want to focus on nutrition, hydration, movement, breathing, rest, and support. So these are all ways to counteract the stress effects.
Perfect.
So let's begin by talking about nutrition. As you know, this is kind of my area of expertise. And even though I've never worked in a dispatch center, I do know a lot about how the body functions, operates, and nutrition is kind of my area. So here, there's a lot, again, going back to the $4.9 trillion industry. There is a lot of noise out there. It seems like every month there is a new diet, there's a new supplement that's supposed to make us healthier and happier. But really, it's hard to navigate and it's cumbersome. Here, a lot of my clients that I get to work with, they specifically have tried all the above. Like here, we see paleo and Optavia and Jenny Craig and even some of the newer trendy diets, but it can be cumbersome. They get too restrictive, they get too rigorous, and they're not sustainable long term. So some people may be able to stick with a diet plan that will help them see some results, but it's not sustainable. So I really truly don't like to use the word diet. I like to focus more on nourishment and healthy food. And so that is where it's about making good choices, not about following a set of rules that comes from whatever's the hot topic in the industry at that time. And so, Ricardo, you look like you want to chime in. Nourishing food and a healthy lifestyle, that's sustainable, that's the key. And so that's where we really get into and are able to fuel the body in a way that it can function optimally. So no cookies and cakes here, except for 20% of the time. So I preach this 80-20 rule, and we'll continue to dive into that. But what we're saying is 20% of the time, you'll allow yourself to the cake or the cookies that you enjoy or for special occasions, but focus primarily on nutrition, nourishing food.
See, and that's what I was gonna jump in and ask about, like, because there are a lot of people out there that, there are resources and such, but it's always, just eat healthy food or just do this or that, and, there's not more of an explanation, and I think that's why this is good here that we're doing this, and that you're going through it because you're explaining and going, step by step. But also, if people are trying to figure out a way to plan food for, the stuff that they're taking in, to be able to have, something like that to go off of. Because I know, like for myself, I remember in dispatch, not a lot of people were, being at home and making a bunch of food so that they can take to work. It was always fast food because it was convenient and that's what we had time for, which is good and bad. But that's how, a lot of these industries are getting our money and why we're sick, right? Because
Yes, exactly.
they make it convenient, and that's what
They
sucks
do.
too. But
And fast food can be really delicious, but they're not in the business of nourishing our body. They're in the business of giving you something that's going to give you immediate gratification.
right.
And it really adds up. If we could see a Grubhub or Uber Eats year
Mhm.
in review, we would be kind of like surprised by how much we really consume.
Right.
And so it really truly is, we need to focus on nourishing foods. And I know that's where we'll talk a little bit more about habit change and about some of the foods in detail and some tips to help. But nu- nutrient rich foods are typically going to be items that are high in minerals, vitamins, proteins, and good fats. Whereas a lot of your fast foods and things that we're ordering out and grabbing on the go, quick and easy, they're going to be high in sodium, high in sugar, and they're going to be simple carbohydrates. And so typically, those are things that we're going to want to avoid in a high stress environment. When our body is stuck in stress and the adrenalines are in overdrive, we really want to give it what it needs to nourish and function properly. And so, this is where we want to reach for vegetables, complex plant based carbohydrates, lean proteins, and then healthy fats. And so, here I have tweaked the traditional food pyramid, and 80% of what we should be consuming should come from those two bottom categories. As you see in the top, there's pizza, there's chips, and there's ice cream. That should be 20% of the time. And so when we sit down and we think about what we're consuming, we should be focusing 80% of our diet in the bottom two categories.
Have you
So
ever have you ever had, I just want to jump in really quick. Have you ever had one of those moments where and I'm sure you have, but also for all of you who are watching this right now, have you ever had a moment where you cut back on sugar and salt, and then you kind of jump back into, kind of how you've been eating, and you realize how much like how much you can actually taste the amount of sugar or salt that is in something. I've done many times. I've had it where I've just completely cut out sugar, or taken stuff that's low in sodium and everything, and then when I go back to eat something that's, got more sugar than it probably I should be taking in, I can taste it, and then I don't want it because my body is now accustomed to, having, making that switch and having those good nutrient foods and everything going in, and it's just really interesting.
yeah, absolutely. So typically what happens there is when we remove that from our diet, our
Mhm.
taste buds and desires actually change. And so then when we go back and we have that pastry or really sweet item, we're like, ooh, this is off putting because our
Mhm.
body has gotten used to the alternative. And so if we eat healthy and we focus primarily 80% of our diet in these bottom two categories, when we do have items in the top two, they're less appealing
Mhm.
or less desirable, and we actually receive less satisfaction from eating them. Our body can also, when we've ate and focused on nutritionist food, when we have that 20%, we can kind of see the effects. So for me, an area, I have gluten sensitivity, which is one of the reasons why I started Nat Packs, is to find food that worked well for me. When I have items that are high in gluten, I feel the effects, whether it's inflammation in my body, how my digestive system works. Whereas there was a point once upon a time where I was eating items high in gluten multiple times a day. that was just the norm.
Mhm.
And so whenever we begin to reduce the amount that those items are in our diet, and reintroduce them, we can see the effects. We can realize how sweet or how salty something actually is. And then we're like, wait, I used to eat this all the time, every day.
Right. Yeah, it's like, "Why don't I like this anymore? What happened?"
your your desire centers actually shift and your taste buds actually change. And so it's kind of funny, like there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the body that drives what we eat and how
Mhm.
we like our choices, and a lot of it stems from our brain, and again going back to cortisol, going back to adrenaline. But if we put really nourishing food in our body, we're going to be less likely to grab or to want some of these really high fat, poor food choices. And so here we are going here again. Let's kind of stay here for a second. This is really important. So
Mhm.
80% of what we eat should be in these bottom two categories. And the most important thing with these bottom two categories is they are minimally processed and unrefined. These bottom two categories are easily identifiable as a direct living plant or animal source. So, a lot of times the items in the top, whether it be chips or ice cream, those are not directly derived from a plant or animal. And so, if we think about food that way, in a lot of diets, going back, there are rules and restrictions around don't eat this particular thing or eat a lot of this particular thing. Here, I just really want you to focus on nourishment, because what we're trying to do and what we're hoping to illustrate here is by providing the body with these highly nourishing foods, we can actually offset the stress effect. We can actually help the body recover and give it the nutrients it needs to function properly. So, in the long run, we feel better, we're more productive, we'll respond to stress better, we sleep better. And so, here, if we focus primarily on these two categories, 80% of our diet should be from these bottom two categories, we can fuel the body for optimal function. And so the carbohydrates that are illustrated here, I think it's important to kind of talk about them. They are complex in nature. They're slowly digested by the body and released as glucose, whereas some of the items like pizza, cookies, cakes, and those sugar items, those create dramatic spikes in the blood sugar level and can actually set us up for type 2 diabetes. And I think that um, it's really important for people in high stress environments to keep that sugars at a consistent level versus those dramatic spikes. Because what happens when we eat a ton of sugar, our body burns through that glucose, and then we have this immediate decline in energy. We feel foggy, we feel junky, and again, we're left craving more sugar and sweets. And so we're continuously impacting our blood sugar levels from highly processed carbohydrates. Whereas these carbohydrates that you're seeing, whether it be potatoes, rice, nuts, grains, oats, those are going to help create a more stabilized blood sugar level.
See, this is interesting, as well, because of the fact that when you've had that much caffeine or sugar or whatever, there's that crash, and the crash is always horrible. And when we're taking phone calls that are basically people's nightmares when they're calling into 911, it just is a vicious cycle. Just keeps going.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's hard because we really want to give the body what it needs to be able to respond to those stressors and in that environment. But cookies, cakes, and caffeine alone are not the ideal source. So I think it's really important that we focus on that. I know a big area, and we'll kind of dive into some of the carbohydrates here in the
Mhm.
future, a couple slides, in a couple slides, but also want to talk a little bit about essential vitamins that are derived from foods in those bottom two categories. So we have things like vitamin A, which are important for vision, bones, teeth, vitamin D, which is vitamin D, which is for calcium, bones, and again, teeth. but also things like vitamin E, which is the antioxidant, vitamin K, which helps with blood clotting and the production of blood, and then vitamin C, which is our immunity boosting vitamin, and then vitamin B. There's a big section there for vitamin Bs for the 2, 3, 6, 7, 9, and 12. A lot of that has to do with how your body converts food into energy and how it breaks down glucose. And so these essential nutrients or essential vitamins are found in nourishing foods. And those are typically in those boxes that we just saw. So over to the far right-hand side, you can kind of see where some of these items come from or where these vitamins come from. But a lot of them are going to be fruits, vegetables, grains, potatoes, spinach, chicken, tofu, beans, fish. So going back again, that bottom 80%, really identifiable items that are either plant or animal.
And looking at the vitamins as well, if you're in the Midwest, make sure if you get checked out or whatever for any vitamin deficiency, vitamin D is a big one. Because I know myself, especially because of winter time, the sun is hitting me right now, but which kind of goes against what I'm saying a little bit. But what I'm saying is, being in the Midwest or an area where there's not a lot of sun all the time, there's other issues that end up going in. So I myself, I have to take vitamin D supplements with I think it's a K2 inhibitor to make sure like all of it is working the way it's
Absorb.
supposed to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it helps. It actually helps a lot. I thought I was like, oh, okay, everybody has some sort of vitamin D deficiency, but then when I started taking the supplements, man, did I feel a lot better.
Right. And you realize how much it can improve
Hmm.
how you feel. And I think that's really important. So, with these essential vitamins, a lot
Hmm.
of them, of course, we can get by taking a supplement. But if we are also providing the body with if we're getting these vitamins through nourishing foods, we're able to fuel the body properly. So, supplements are always great options. However, if we can get them directly from food, that is ideal. So, in addition to these vitamins, some items that you find in those bottom two categories are magnesium and potassium. They help you have a strong heart and healthy normal blood pressure. It also impacts muscles. So magnesium is a big one. There's been a lot of buzz in the industry about magnesium in particular, and it's really important for your industry because it is depleted quickly in times of high stress.
Mm.
A deficiency in magnesium can lead to depression and anxiety. And magnesium is known as like that calming mineral that helps the brain cope. So not only does it play a big function in our muscles, but it helps our brain respond better to stress. And so if you're concerned about some vitamin deficiencies, maybe consider a multivitamin. But if you're feeling drained and exhausted, I challenge you to change the way that you're eating.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree, but also potassium, a big thing. Let me tell you a quick story before you go to the next
Yeah.
slide. When I first started out dispatching, there was actually a point where I was going to possibly be a Florida State trooper. I went for the testing and everything, the physical, and I did test it. You had to complete this in like 4 or 5 minutes, and I think I had a minute and a half left. But the obstacle course that I had to go through, at one point, you have to hold on to this dummy that is like 100 over 100 pounds. It's just like dead weight, and you have to drag it. You have to drag it. I forget how far you have to actually drag it, but I got halfway and I think it was my right leg completely cramped up. And I
Mm.
and I fell. And when I fell, when I fell, my shoe flew up in the air. And the drill sergeants are all there just yelling at me and
I'm
saying,
surprised they
"Get
weren't
up."
laughing.
Oh, I started to laugh, but then as soon as they started yelling at me and saying, "Martinez, get up now." I got up because they're yelling stuff. They're like, you're being shot at, all this other stuff. So I start dragging. I make it through the whole thing with one shoe and a sock that's completely wet because of what I was running through and stuff. And at the end, one of the guys comes up to me and he goes, "You passed, Martinez." I was like, "Thank you, sir." And he goes, "But you need to eat more bananas. You need some more potassium in your life. Your leg would not have cramped up if that would have happened. You got a lot of heart. We'll see you later." I was like, "Thanks."
Yeah, and it's funny how that sticks with you.
Hmm.
Whether we are physically exerting our body, like in the scenario of your agility test, or we're looking at the new, like just full functioning nutrition, it's important to have potassium, and it does play a big part in how our muscles respond to stimulus and stress. And not only does it affect our muscles, but it also affects our whole body. Like we need these things. And so we can't skip over nutrients, vitamins, and minerals. So it's really important that we derive those from a nourishing diet. So again, we kind of touched on this earlier with the other slide, but let's talk about carbs. A lot of times, like carbs are the quickest and easiest go-to. They're often found in packaged items. They're often found in fast food. And so over here on the right-hand side, you'll see some of the bad carbs that we're illustrating, and it's just cereal, sweets, chips, ice cream, cookies, white bread, white rice, all of these, in comparison to some of the good carbohydrates on the left with nuts, seeds, fruits. Fruits are a great source of carbohydrates, and fruits are typically packed with a lot of those vitamins that our body needs. Also, lentils, quinoa, oats, and brown rice. And so it's really important that again we focus like on more on carbohydrates that are complex in nature because they help keep that stabilize blood sugar levels, and they're released slowly into the body and bloodstream. So if this is what you're grabbing and going to, I challenge you to take a look at what you're eating. If you're feeling exhausted and drained on a regular basis, and this is what you're going for, I challenge you to focus on nutrition. So, a big question that a lot of times I'm asking my clients is when is the last time that you drank half a gallon of water in a day? And when's the last time you had 5 servings of vegetables? And what type of protein are you typically eating? Like, most people aren't eating enough protein. And outside of water, protein is the biggest component of our body. So, I think that that's an important that we look at what we're eating and we kind of do a self assessment. If we're feeling stressed, drained, and overwhelmed, look at nutrition.
So before you move to the next slide, seeing this makes me think of a time in dispatch because so for the first degree that I was getting for web development, one of the things I had to do was do an internship. So for that one, it was web development. So I went and worked with the county's IT department, and I would work there for 4 hours and then go into dispatch and work for 12 hours.
Hmm.
And this was, oh man, I think it was once or twice a week I was doing this. Which now thinking about it, maybe that's why I have so many issues. Because what I was doing is I would go and purchase what is on this picture, basically. So I would get food, if I can even call it that. But I would get enough to last me
The whole
those
shift.
those 16 hours that I was getting, the 4 hours and then the 12. So I would order all this food, right? And then I pull up and the person's just staring at me. And I would say, one time I said this, I didn't say it every time, but there was one time and I said, "This is not all in one sitting, okay? This is for like 16 hours. It's gonna
Or
last me for 16 hours." And they're like, "Okay."
or you just hope that they don't think it's all for you.
Right, yeah. But that
Like
one time the person was just
they see one person and they're a little confused. But
right, yes.
I understand. And the reason you were doing that is because you had limitations on your time
Mhm.
and you knew that you needed something to eat, but you opted for the quickest, most convenient option. And sometimes fast food restaurants aren't in the business of making us healthy. They're not a part of that $4.9 trillion industry. So they're really not concerned with our wellness. And there are a lot of documentaries and information out there that actually go into some of the impacts long term of eating fast food. And of course, like right now, we're highlighting like this is what I want you to avoid. Your lunch should not look like this on a regular basis. And so if you're eating this for 16 hours, I'm really concerned.
Yeah, so for me too, thinking about it, I it was that was just me. Like this was convenient, right? And that's what I was going for. I was going for the convenience. When I had everything you've talked about at home, and I could have made something myself to take that was probably way more amazing than this, but I was tired. It was that vicious cycle going through. And I think if I had been like the last year and a half was completely different. And I was taking in a lot more, really good stuff. I was exercising, yoga, and we'll get to some of that other stuff here too. But that was all me. That was just me, for lack of a better way to say it. I was just being lazy and just kind of falling into it. But I had to do what I had to do at the time. But I also, after getting done eating it, I end up feeling like I shouldn't have eaten that.
Again,
Feel like garbage.
these things really take a toll on your health when you're eating them
Mhm.
consistently. And you can even, after just this one combo we have illustrated here, um, it can affect your digestive system and how you feel. And so, what I'm really wanting to do is to challenge people within the industry to shift some of those habits and some of the desires to eat like this. So if your lunch is looking like this, don't worry. I've got some tips and tricks and some slides to kind of help illustrate some alternatives. And I really hope that you understand that by providing the body with nourishing foods, we can undo some of the impacts from our physical and mental health.
Perfect.
Yeah. So in time, by changing your habits and changing what you eat, you can feel better, improve your mood, and through body. In time, by changing your habits and what you eat, you can feel better, you can improve your mood, and have a healthier, happy body. So um, one of the keys, again, going back to convenience, is have healthy options close by. So you're a lot less likely to order Grubhub or Uber Eats or stop for fast food on the way into the center if you have healthy options in the refrigerator and you take a little bit of time to kind of prepare some items. So um, I want to start by talking about a shopping hack or shopping method that I've shared with a lot of my clients that really seems to work and keep them on track. And so this is what I call the 4-4-3-3 method. And so typically what you're going to want to do when you're shopping for groceries is buy 4 types of protein, 4 types of vegetables, 3 types of carbs, and 3 types of fruits. And so by doing that, you have like a zillion combinations that you can mix and match together to create some really healthy items. A lot of people, even when they're trying to like steer away from the fast food, they'll have like, I buy this and only this and this and this and this. But that gets really boring, and we need variety and interest, not only to keep us on track, but also to fuel our body, because so many of the nutrients and vitamins that come from different sources, we want to eat across that whole bottom part of the pyramid. This method is a great way to kind of keep us on track. And so here I have listed out some of the items within that 4-4-3-3 method. And so again, 4 types of protein, 4 types of vegetables, 3 types of carbohydrates, and 3 fruits. And so one of the reasons that I'm listing out fruits separately is because those are a great opportunity to get in carbohydrates and to crave that sweet tooth in a way that's going to nourish our body. So cookies and cakes are great, like they taste phenomenal, but they're nutrient, from a nutrient perspective, they're really not doing anything for us. Whereas if we are eating oranges and bananas, instead of cookies and cakes, not only are we getting something sweet, but we're getting something that's packed with potassium, vitamin C, calcium, and some of the other minerals that we need to function. And so had you been snacking on bananas before your agility test, may have not had to end the race with no shoes or no shoe,
Right.
one shoe. But from this grocery shopping cheat sheet, you'll see things like chicken breast. It's kind of a staple, but if we pair chicken breast with quinoa and then we have green beans and mushrooms, there's a ton of variety that you can make by following the 4433 method.
That sounds amazing, actually, what you just said right there. Also, what you're also saying is don't go grocery shopping when you're, haven't eaten, because that's when you start pulling all the other stuff in, right?
Yes. So I really do not like, I am a big advocate for planning your groceries and sitting down and saying, okay, here's my 4433. This is what I'm going to get, because it helps keep you on track. It's really easy to get distracted in the store. Stop like as soon as you go in, and it's like cookies, cakes, muffins, and to grab that and to get kind of sidetracked or to go in without a plan is like setting yourself up for failure. But to go in unhungry and without a plan, that's just a really bad idea. So don't do that. Nowadays, we do have things like Instacart and grocery pickup that can really save us not only time, but also can prevent us from getting derailed in the grocery store and be like, oh, let me go down the cookie aisle.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I love that all the fruits that you have on here, especially grapefruit. I am a huge grapefruit fan. I love grapefruit. And
Me
I
too.
would rather have that than like a Twinkie, because there's a reason that the people say that after like the apocalypse and stuff, what'll be left over are Twinkies.
Well,
What's in it?
right. It's
And
so
what does it do to your body?
right, and that kind of goes back to even the burger. It's so highly processed that it's really even questionable whether or not it is food anymore. And so it's I have to keep reiterating this point about eating healthy and nourishing food. And again, all of if you're following this logic long term, you're going to set yourself up for improved health. But these are some of the things that I talk about with my clients is the 4433 method, having a plan, ordering your groceries online, not going to the grocery store on an empty stomach, and having an approach. So I use the 443 method. It helps a lot. It also helps make pairing different items together really easy. So let's say, for example, one week my 4433 was going to be chicken thighs, ground beef, eggs, and bacon. Okay. And then over on the vegetable side, I'm going to get green beans, mushrooms, some leafy greens, and then what about like squash? So for breakfast, I can easily pair bacon, eggs, mushrooms, and some leafy greens together. For dinner, I can very easily do ground beef, green beans, greens. And so from that, you can make a lot of different combinations by following the 443 method. If that's overwhelming and you want to talk more in detail like about the 443 method or how to prepare meals, anyone is certainly welcome to reach out to me. I could spend hours just talking about how to prepare meals and ways to put things together. But for this topic, I don't want to give you a whole cooking class, a physiology class, and nutrition class together in one day. So we're just going to kind of high level that 443 method. And again, if you want to talk more about that, I'm available. So to prepare a balanced meal from the 443 method is much easier. And so we want to have our meals 50% vegetables, 25% protein, and 25% healthy carbs. A lot of times in the diets that we saw earlier, it'll say 3 ounces of carbohydrates and 6 ounces of protein. And most people are not getting out their scale. They're not doing that. They really struggle with that. And so with that level of detail, so here is just a really good reminder of the 50, 25, 25. If we can stay there and kind of remember that when we're filling up our plate or whether we're making ourselves a lunch or a snack, that's a great rule, a great easy rule to follow. So again, setting aside time to prepare balanced meals and snacks for your shift. This is key. It'll save you not only money and time because fast food and Grubhub and Uber Eats are so expensive, but it's also going to give you those items on hand readily available so that you're not as likely to make poor choices. So this is kind of what we want your meals to look a little bit more like. So again, you can see we're seeing that 50, 25, 25 logic illustrated here. I mean, we've got this fruit bowl, but when we're looking at over here with the cheese, nuts, carrots, and apples, it's following that 50, 25, 25 logic. So we've talked about the 4, 4, 3, 3 shopping, which gives us plenty of fresh options that we can mix and match. We've also talked about the 50, 25, 25 method, which is kind of our general good rule of thumb for preparing a meal.
Every one of those meals looks delicious. I just had to say that
Right?
really quick as you're going on.
Right. And then, of course, don't forget about hydration. And so I mentioned this kind of earlier in ways to offset metabolic syndrome, stress, and long-term chronic diseases is through food and nutrition, but also hydration. If you're only drinking sodas and caffeine, make a point. Set a reminder on your phone to get up and go fill up your water bottle, or hey, pause and at least drink some water. So those are good ways to continue to be hydrated and nourished even on shift. And so over time, by changing your lifestyle and diet choices, you'll reach a healthier weight, optimal body function, more energy, better digestion, sleep better, immunity will be improved, and then primarily you're reducing your risk for long-term chronic diseases.
If you can stay on this here for just 1 second, the immunity part, and just a lot of the things, especially the energy, but inflammation. So, like I said, the last year and a half, I completely changed a lot of the stuff that I was doing when I was in dispatch. And a lot of the times before that, there were a lot of us getting sick all the time. But when I started taking care of my gut health, maybe once or twice a year, I was getting sick, which
Mm-hmm.
was amazing, and it was because I was actually paying attention to that part, and, also, like, the inflammation, I have a small issue with, gluten as well, so I kinda changed everything that I was doing, and a lot of the pain that I was having went away, and it was mostly because of inflammation that I would have never really, in the beginning was not thinking about that, but once I started changing things and really paying attention to what I was putting in my body, a lot of this stuff went away.
Right. So if we're fueling our body with nutritious foods, we are reducing the likelihood that we're eating some of those fast foods and highly processed items. And those are huge culprits in causing inflammation, whether it's in the gut or within the body. They're huge culprits in creating inflammation and pain, and then also setting us up for chronic disease. And so here, we've illustrated some of the effects and ways to offset stress and ways to offset chronic stress. So change doesn't happen overnight. A lot of times that's more of a long term, but you have to start with small steps in the right direction. And so don't be afraid to pack your snacks and food for work. Like, set aside a little bit of time. Again, if you have questions, particularly on food preparation, on your individual needs, we can discuss those. And then just, you have to start somewhere. So back to like nourishing the body for physical and mental health. We've talked about nutrition, we've hit on hydration. And so now we're going to dive into a little bit more of the other topics that Ricardo and I have mentioned, like movement and breathing. And so it's really important that we activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the alternative to the stress and the sympathetic nervous system. So in the parasympathetic nervous system response, typically when like our heart rate declines, blood pressure drops, and then breathing deepens, we relax. It's our rest and recover phase. And so what we want to do is we really want to activate and encourage the parasympathetic nervous system for people in these high stress roles like 911 dispatch center. So some ways that we can do that in addition to food and nutrition is through mindful movement. And so this we had talked about, even just you and I, stretching and yoga are a great way to encourage and activate the parasympathetic nervous system response. Walking and lifts or low intensity cardio are also great ways to counteract the effects of stress. So when having a healthy and happy body, we cannot avoid movement. And a lot of times people in high stress environments, they've been eating poorly, they have inflammation, pain, and potentially chronic disease. And a lot of times they don't want to, or they avoid movement. But really this is the necessary reset for that. So go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I completely agree with all of that too. And just, for all of you who are watching this right now, when you're sitting there, just if you think about it, just let your shoulders drop. Even that sometimes will relieve so much stress from here going up into your brain, because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times we don't realize how we're sitting. And so, we're like this, especially after a hard call, and then just let it drop. That alone is a lot.
Right. So taking a few moments after an intense call, or even making time within your shift to kind of to do that posture and self check. And so whether we spend a minute or two just stretching the body or a minute or two breathing, which we'll get to, it can
Mhm.
really offset some of those effects of stress. And so again, dropping the shoulders away from the ears, bringing that shoulder blades back and down into the body instead of rounding and curling forward. Um, those are things that can help release tension and undo the sitting. And so that's really important. I think that's a great topic or a great point. For me, a lot of times when I was sitting for long periods of time, I get to that point where I'm like, ooh, you start to get stiff and sticky and things are kind of tense. And that's where I'm like, my body needs like 2 seconds of just intentional movement to undo some of this sitting. And so we can all, I could spend quite a bit of time talking about some seated postures and movements to undo stress and tension. But again, like from a high level perspective, I just want people to remember how important that is and like how crucial it is for releasing stress and alleviating tension in the body. It's also really important for people that are in pain to move mindfully. So if you have an injury or a chronic issue that prevents your mobility, of course, see a physical therapist or a physician. But if your muscles are just tense and sticky and tight, a lot of times that's tension, that's stress, and movement in a really mindful way can like help undo all of that. Also, a lot of people find the word yoga really intimidating, and like I hope that with more exposure, there's less stigmatism around that word. But even if we just look at stretching in general, which is primarily what yoga is based on, we can really see the benefits. So not only we've talked kind of about undoing tension and pain, but it generally improves circulation and can help fight inflammation. So, and then also by activating that parasympathetic nervous system, we're able to help and have better sleep. We're fighting muscle atrophy because we're getting in there and we're improving the circulation. With more of the walking and low impact cardio or low impact list activities, which would be like cycling or even just taking the stairs, we're improving our lung capacity, having a healthier heart. And all of these together, whether it's just gentle stretching, yoga, or the list and walking, they actually help improve our mood and mental health. And so a lot of times in those chronic stress scenarios, if it really begins to take a toll, not only on the physical body, but on your mental space. And so here with movement, whether mindful movement in particular, you can begin to like feel better. So a fun fact that I found and that I found really interesting was studies have shown that the yoga improves the quality of life for individuals with cancer, COPD, depression, and even PTSD. Other evidence shows that walking for 2 minutes after a meal can help lower our blood sugar level. And that by doing 30 minutes of activity 3 to 5 times a week, we reduce our risk of diabetes by over 25%. So these are fun statistics that can often open our eyes to see just how important mindful movement is and some of the benefits of activating that parasympathetic nervous system. So sleep and mood, another really great way to activate the parasympathetic nervous system is through regular sleep, and that has a direct impact on our mood. And some tips for sleeping include keeping regular sleep hours, making a bedtime routine, reducing the TV and the phone, limiting caffeine, and then relaxation. And so that's where we're again talking about that parasympathetic nervous system. So here I've illustrated some of the main symptoms and effects of fatigue and sleep deprivation. And so a lot of times when our body is in these high stress scenarios, and what we're trying to do is activate that parasympathetic nervous system, give it that opportunity to rest, reset, and restore. If we don't, what we're doing is we're setting ourselves up for fatigue, for burnout, for sleep deprivation. And a lot of times that goes along with having low energy, poor decision making, impaired memory, poor health, inability to concentrate, mood imbalances. So all of that can be a result alone of deprivation of sleep. So I know you've probably seen that, especially with 16-hour shifts and working that long. Like at the end of the 16 hours, you're completely burnt out.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And that inability to make decisions there, that's what we do all day. So we need to be able to do that. And I'll say it right now, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who are watching this right now and they're in the audience too, thinking, we're in dispatch. We don't have regular sleep hours, which we don't. But there are ways to help with all of this, with the sleep that we do get, but also exercising. Because I know that when I was actually moving around and having good exercise and all the other good stuff, I was actually able to sleep better, and I was able to actually concentrate more. Because before that, I don't even know what sleep was.
Right. And without sleep and movement, a lot of times that sleep or movement in particular helps kind of get into your body and create awareness, and you're able to have clearer thoughts and thought process. And so yoga is really good for that. It kind of slows down the monkey mind of like a million racing thoughts. And then having adequate amounts of sleep, that's really important for mood, for making decisions, and being on the front line and like being the lifeline of safety for the public. It's important that you're taking care of yourself and that you're not sleep deprived and fatigued, because that's going to show up in how you're able to serve the public, how you feel, and overall your job performance. So I think it's really important that we make sleep a priority. again, I can't stress enough how important that is. So another great way to activate the parasympathetic nervous system is through breath. Breath is life, and it is a way to immediately reduce stress and lower the heart rate. So a great thing that I heard recently was even Navy SEALs use breath techniques. They're not woo-woo, fuzzy-wuzzy people, and they use breath techniques because what it does is it helps them focus. It calms them down. It lowers the heart rate and it reduces their stress level in that moment. And so with breath, we can offset some of those factors of stress. And so a couple of great breathing techniques that are very easy to do at your desk. People might look at you like you're crazy, but you might start a trend. And I challenge you actually to start a trend, because the more that you're able to be conscious of your breath, the more you're able to offset some of those effects of stress. And so one of those is the alternate nostril breathing, which is where you breathe in and out one side, and then you breathe in and out the other side. And you can continue to repeat that pattern for 4 to 6 rounds. And eventually what you'll notice is that you're sitting differently, that your mindset has shifted, that you have opened up your airways, and that you're calmer. You're better able to either recover from stress or better prepared to respond to future stressors because of just the lower heart rate and the amount of oxygen that's in the body. So another great option is the box breathing. I'm sure some of these may be tactics that you've heard before, but that is where you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, in for 4. And so there's a lot of different opinions and styles of intentional breathing out there, but one of my favorites that's like super simple is called chest, ribs, belly. So not only does it bring awareness to the breath, but it brings awareness to the body. So you put one hand on your chest, kind of like you were going to say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then one hand on the belly, a little above like your belly button. And so in that breathing process, you're going to focus on chest, ribs, belly, the expansion of those areas. And then on the exhale, you're going to think compression, chest, ribs, or belly, ribs, chest. And so it's chest, ribs, belly in, belly, ribs, chest out. And so that alone helps open up the airways and the diaphragm for more air and oxygen. And it's a great way to relieve stress. So again, like I could provide a lot of examples and spend a lot of time just on breath, movement, and yoga alone. But today I'm hoping that we've provided some tools and illustrated some facts and information that'll help you be more aware of what's going on in your body and high stress and how to offset that stress. And so if anyone has questions or would like additional information around what happens to your body in stress and how to offset that, I am glad to help. And you can reach me through the email or phone number that's listed on the leading screen or the last screen of the presentation. I'll also be putting some additional resources out for Ricardo to share with anyone. You can go there and kind of click on the links. But I think it's really important for your industry to focus on ways to offset that stress. So here, again, we've kind of illustrated some ways to relax. These are things that you could incorporate either as part of your wake routine or part of your bedtime routine, or even during a break at work. So on your shift, whether it's just breathing, whether it's just taking a second to like close your eyes, intentionally breathe. Those are all great, or to stretch. Those are all great ways to offset the effects of stress and to relax. Over time, through food and nutrition, through tactics to offset stress and activate the parasympathetic nervous system, you'll see changes in your body and you'll feel better. And that's where, with food and nutrition, we can reach a healthier weight. We can have more energy, optimal body functions, and reduce the risk for chronic disease and inflammation. And so I really hope that some of the things that we have shared will be useful tools and will help drive conversations around ways to offset stress. Consistency is the key. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm glad to help. You can reach me at natalie@natpacks.com. You can also follow us on social media, whether that's Facebook, Instagram. And if you have questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. I know that we went over a lot of information today, and I appreciate having Ricardo in with us to chat through some things, but there's a lot of detail. And when we talk about stress and the impacts on the body, whether it's what's actually going on, there's a lot of detail. And so I'm trying to spare you some of that physiology, biology, chemistry lessons and really make it something that you're able to learn from, but also utilize going forward. And so again, if you have questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was excellent to have you here and to talk about everything that you do, but really, go into, a lot of this stuff, because this is stuff that, those in our profession really need to pay attention to and start going through. And I'm sure, because I felt this way a couple times, there's those memes on social media or whatever that say, I feel like I'm being attacked or whatever, because there's different, habits or whatever it is, but that's a good thing, because it makes you think, and it makes you really think about what it is that you're doing, and you understand about it. I'm still trying to think about what it would be like, because so like Spotify, they do their wrapped for the year, how much what it was that you were listening to the most, and
Right.
how many minutes or whatever, the percentage of this or that, or however they do it. But to do something like that, as you were saying, for like an Uber Eats or DoorDash or whatever, to see what you've been getting the most, oh man, that would be eye-opening. So eye-opening.
It really would, and mine would be primarily nap packs, but I am at the advantage of that's what I focus on. That's what I provide as a resource to my clients here in Central North Carolina. But what if we thought about a wrap as in what are we doing to take care of our body on an annual basis? Like if we had that really high level, took a step back summary, how often are we eating healthy? How often are we hitting those water goals? What are we doing to offset stress and take care of ourselves physically and mentally? I think that we would see areas where we can make some slight shifts and even push toward bigger change. And again, consistency is the key, and it's starting small is a great way to get started at all. But I have a consistency tracker that can kind of help you. I can't make a summary of your year in review, but I can help you going forward. And so that's where, like, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. The consistency tracker I will be sending to share. I think that's really a great reminder of like, yes, today I drank plenty of water. Today I ate nourishing food. I made a point to move my body. If we looked at what we're doing like that from a high level, that's a great place to start. And by seeing some areas where we may be making bad choices, we can shift that and make better choices. And so I think it's really important, especially for your industry as the front line. It really does take a special type of person to dedicate themselves to saving others. And oftentimes that stress plays a big role in your body. And so if I can provide some tools and education for your industry in particular, I think that that's really important. And I feel very called to do so.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so very much for providing all of this information, because it's about time for us to also take care of ourselves. So
yes.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank
don't
you.
Forget,
Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo.
Everyone who is here, we're going to be going to the next session here in just a moment. And again, thank you very much. We'll see you all in the next one. that was an excellent session. Wait, Roxy says, wait, there are two of you? Yes. So Natalie couldn't be here for the session, so we pre-recorded this this past Sunday, And we were able to do this, and it was excellent to be on there with her and go through all of this. Now, Mark, I believe you asked a question in here, and it was suggestions for a good multivitamin for a 49-year-old man. There are so many choices. All I can say, because I don't know, but what I would suggest is, with the information that was on there for Natalie, to please get a hold of her. You can send a message to her email, and you can ask the question there. I think that would be probably the best way to do it. She'd be able to give you way more information, and we wanted to do this live, but she had some engagements that she had to get to that were really that were going on today, and we couldn't break it apart. And these sessions were already done, so we pre-recorded it, and I think it went very, very well. To be able to get all of this information, and she is a wealth of knowledge. And oh, awesome! Well, there you go. Even better, Mark. So excellent. Make sure to reach out and check out everything that Natalie is doing with NatPaks. And again, this session was Nourished for Optimal Health, even in high stress. And thank you to NatPaks for being a silver sponsor of Dare to Be Great for Era of the Headset. And I can't say enough good things. I mean, there's more conversations like this that need to be had, and I'm going to eventually have her on the podcast. But also, we're going to be doing a dispatchers roundtable broadcast for that as well. Um, that is everything for this session. We're going to go to the next one. We've got keynote speaker Samantha Hawkins that is going to be jumping in here in just a moment. So we will see you there. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to Natalie once again for everything.